Hi, sixth graders. This is Unit 4, our fractions unit, and the lesson is adding and subtracting fractions. So make sure you label that at the top of your page. A new start in your notebook is great for a new unit. So there's two different types of, well, there's lots of different types of fractions, but we have like fractions and unlike fractions. So like fractions means that they have the same denominator. So this would be a good word and a good definition to write down with a couple of examples. So 3/5 and 2/5 are like fractions. 1/8 and 7/8 are like fractions. So we can see that there's a 5 and a 5, 8 and 8, so same denominator. When we add and subtract like fractions, we add or subtract the numerators and then write the results over the denominator. So let's wait to write that down and we'll do some problems and then we'll write the steps after. So if we look at a couple different like fractions adding and subtracting together, and we have a couple of visuals. So if we look at 5/9 plus 2/9, we can see over here that we have a strip that's broken up into 9 pieces. First, we can see that this represents 5/9, and then we add 2/9 more. So then there's a total of all of them of 7/9. So really what we're doing is we have 5/9 plus 2/9. I'm going to add my 5 and my 2, and I'm going to keep my denominator. Same goes for subtracting. We can see here we start with 9/10. This strip is broken up into tenths, and then we take one away, so we're left with 8/10. So 9/10 minus 1/10 is 8/10. And then we need to write it in simplest form. And I can see that 8 and 10 can both be divided by 2. So I would end up with 4/5. So fractions always need to be written in simplest form. 7/9 was already in simplest form. You try these two and then come back and check your answer. So 1/6 plus 3/6. So 1 plus 3 equals 4. So 1/6 plus 3/6, so we have 4/6, and then it needs to be in simplest form, so it would be 2/3. Here we have to notice that this is subtraction, so 3/7 minus 1/7. 3 minus 1 is 2. Keep the denominator already in simplest form, so that's 2/7. Least common denominator is when we have unlike fractions. So unlike fractions means different denominators. So like 1/2 and 1/3, or 3/8 and 4/9. Those are examples of unlike fractions. The least common denominator would be the smallest number that both denominators can go into. So let's do some examples so we can see exactly what this least common denominator means. But these two words, along with the like fractions, would be great vocab words to have in your notes with the definition. So adding unlike fractions. So we can see that we have 1/2 plus 1/6 unlike fractions because the 2 and the 6 are different, and we're going to add them. So if we look over here at our visual, we can see that we have one strip that's broken up in half. So here's our half, the blue. And then we have the same size strip broken up into 6, and here's our 6th. And then if we take another strip and we kind of put them all, like add them all together into our one strip, we can see that this represents our half, this represents our 6th, so we end up with 4/6 or 2/3, because this is a third that's a third, that's a third. So we have 4/6 or 2/3. So let's look over here and add them together and see how it works when we don't have a visual. So 2 and 6 are different denominators. What we want to find is the least common denominator, meaning what is a number that 2 and 6 can both go into in a whole amount, like with nothing left over. So I know that 2 can go into 6, so we're going to change it to 6. So 1/6 is going to stay the same because that's already in 6. 2 times 3 is 6, and whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. Oops. So 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. So we had 1/2, and we just changed it to 3/6. So basically, we're just making an equivalent fraction so that we have the same denominators. Now we know that we just add our numerators. We get 4/6, and then we simplify it, divide by 2, and we get 2/3. So basically, what we're doing is we're taking our fractions and we're renaming them. So when we rename them, we need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of the original fraction by the same number. If we're subtracting unlike fractions, we're doing the same exact steps except we're subtracting. So before we start, we want to kind of look at what we have. We have 11/12, which is really close to 1, 3/8, which is really close to 1/2. So our answer is going to be around 1/2. So let's rewrite it right here. And then I ask myself, what number can 12 and 8 both go into? I know that I can always multiply them by each other, and 12 times 8 would be 96. I know they both go into 96, and I could change it to 96, but I also know that 12 and 8 can both go into 24. So then I'm going to change it to 24, so I could just go like this. So I know that's where I'm going for. And then I know 12 times 2 is 24, so I have to do 11 times 2. So I have to do the same thing. Whatever I do to this fraction, to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So 11 times 2 is 22. And then I know 8 times 3 is 24, so I have to do the same. So I do 3 times 3, which is 9. So I have 22 24ths minus 9 24ths. 22 minus 9, so my 24ths stay the same. 22 minus 9 would be 13. I know 13 24ths is in simplest form. 12 24ths is 1/2, so I know 13 24ths is close to 1/2, so it checks for reasonableness. Okay, you do these problems on your own and then come back and check. So 8/9 minus 2/3. 3 can go into 9, so I'm just going to change this to 9ths. And I know 3 times 3 is 9, so then I have to do the same to the top. I'm going to rewrite it. 8/9 minus 6/9 would be 2/9, because 8 minus 6 is 2, and I keep the denominator the same. And then that's in simplest form, so we keep it like that. 5/6 minus 3/8. 6 and 8 can both go into 24. 6 times 4, so I do the same. So 20 24ths minus, and then I do 8 times 3, because 8 times 3 is 24, and then 3 times 3, so 9 24ths, and then I end up with 11 24ths. And then 7/8 plus 3/4. 7/8 plus 3/4. 4 can go into 8, so 4 times 2, 3 times 2, so 7/8 plus 6/8 would be 13/8. This is an improper fraction, so it's not in simplest form, so I have to make it a mixed number. I know 8 can go into 13 one time, which would be 8, and then 13 minus 8 is 5, and keep my denominator, so 1 and 5/8. If we look at 7/8 again, and I don't want to change it to 8s, like say I forget that 4 can go into 8, and I know that 8 times 4 is 32, so what I would do is I would just multiply each fraction by the other number. So see how I'm making it so that there's 32 on the bottom. So I'd have 28 30-seconds plus 24 30-seconds. And then 28 plus 24, I know 28 plus 20 is 48, plus 4 would be 52. So 52 30-seconds would also be the same as 1. And then so 32 goes into 52 one time, so 1 with 20 left over. I divide them both by 4, and I would still end up with 1 5/8. So it's just a little bit more work, a little bit more simplifying, but if you don't do the least common denominator, you still are going to end up with the same answer as long as you do all of your simplifying correct. And then if we have a real world example, so in a recent study, students were asked what they would choose for a healthy lunch. The results are shown in the graph. So what fraction more of the students chose salad bar rather than a deli sandwich? So salad bar I can see is 9/20, and a deli sandwich I can see is 3/25. And it says what fraction more of the students, so that means how many more, so I'm going to take the difference. So 20 and 25 can both go into 100, so I'm going to change it to hundreds. So I know, so that's when I have to ask myself, what do I do to each fraction to get to 100? 20 times 5, so I do the same to the top. 25 times 4, do the same to the top. So let's rewrite it. 45 100ths minus 12 100ths. 45 minus 12, so 45 minus 10 is 35, minus 2 is 33 over 100. That's in simplest form, so 33/100ths. And then the last one, what fraction of students chose pizza or chicken nuggets? So pizza is 3/20, chicken nuggets is 1/10. I'm going to add it together. I can change my tenths to 20ths just by multiplying them both by 2, because 10 times 2 is 20. So 3/20 plus 2/20, we have 5/20. And then I can divide both my numerator and my denominator by 5 to get it in simplest form. So I would end up with 1/4. So 1/4 of the students picked pizza or chicken nuggets. And then lastly, here's just one more example of all of the steps for adding and subtracting fractions. So if you've already written it out in steps that include all of these, great. Otherwise, if you want to write it out in your own words, that would be fine too. But we always have to remember that we need to rewrite with the same common denominator. So you could even just write find common denominator, add or subtract the numerators, denominator stays the same, and then we always have to change it into simplest form. That is all I have for you. Have a good night.